I just walked into a restaurant for a drink and the middle-aged man was peeing in the toilet mirror. He was almost looking at the young me. Are you the one who will live forever? I heard a familiar voice and slowly turned around. Woman Nian Xi's face came into view again. The vegetable basket in his hand fell to the ground with a bang. After confirming the person in front of her, Nian Xi immediately covered her mouth with her hand. The tears in his eyes suddenly fell heavily. Suddenly, a little girl rushed out of the kitchen of the mother's tavern. When he heard the little girl's name, I looked at my former childhood sweetheart with a confused look. When Nian Xi looked into my eyes, he didn't deliberately avoid them, just slowly touched my face. You are still the same as before. Finally I asked the doubts in my heart. Why? When Nian Xi smiled, then lowered his head and touched the little girl's head with great affection during the war. After being saved from death, he came back here with me. At that time, Li Zizi said that you bought the official body from him, and I waited for you for 3 years. Disappointment and helplessness flashed in his eyes. He has been taking care of me for the past 3 years. He is very good to me. When I heard this, I was stunned for a moment and then smiled in relief, but there was a hint of bitterness in the smile. I have been sleeping for 10 years, which is a very short period for me. 10 years is too long for Nian Xi. How many more decades in life? Little girl's head. Little girl, what's your name? Facing my sudden movement, the little girl turned her head. I looked at my mother and saw her nod. My name is Li Niansheng. I'm 6 years old, classical Chinese. I have read this name several times. It's really a good name. There is also a new character in my brother's name. But my name is Chen Changsheng. You can call me Brother Longevity and leave. Seeing Nian Xi subconsciously asked, where are you going? His voice was heard. I stopped and turned my back to the mother and daughter and waved. Then my back slowly disappeared. However, when Li Lazy saw the person at the door, he was so scared that he lay down in the coffin. He was still mumbling. It seems like the end of my life is near. Why did that wretch Chen Changsheng come looking for me? Listening to Li Lazy's words, I grinned and stopped. When I came to the coffin and looked at Li Lazy with his eyes closed in the coffin, Li Lazy, are you not afraid of me? You helped me bury. Li Lazy said a few words. Li Lazy, I am 60 years old. Zhang said that I still have at most 3 years to live, and when you came to buy the coffin, it was the first time I saw it. Someone is happy to bury a coffin for himself. I know you will come back. Li Lazy looked at me again to see if he was interested. Come to me as a man. This profession is most suitable for a lonely man like you. This craft, most likely you will not starve to death in your life. After hearing Li Lazy's words, I felt a little strange. Even though I can live a long time, I am still injured, one of the many causes of death. Seeing me nod, Li Lazy took out a Tibetan sutra from his arms and threw it to me. Then he continued to lie in the coffin to sleep and looked at the Tibetan sutra in his hand, was stunned for a moment, then went into another coffin. When I got used to sleeping in Li's coffin, my bed was really uncomfortable. Winter comes and summer comes, autumn is harvested and winter hides. I was in Li Lazy's coffin. The shop has been completed. I usually read this book and learn how to make coffins. Skills. Every time Bai Shi eats everything, I can improve the food. However, it occurs in typing year of all years. Chen Changsheng couldn't improve his food several times a year after I came. He lived for a full 5 years, but in the end he still didn't make it through the afternoon. One night, Li Lazy was lying in a coffin and couldn't get up anymore. The door of the coffin shop was suddenly opened by a girl. I was startled by the movement, and then helplessly got up from the coffin. Niansheng has told you how many times, what it's like to be a running girl, wandering around the casket shop all day. After saying that, I looked at Li Niansheng's figure and couldn't help but sigh. Now the plague has been rampant for a full year and a half of not living their lives, so they have to help take care of it themselves. And the gap between my sleep hours should not be less than 1/10 of my total age. I can do it. I fell asleep again, but this Niansheng girl is now unaccompanied. I couldn't bear to see him left alone in the world. I shook my head, jumped out of the coffin, and walked into the kitchen together quietly. Soon, 2 steamed breakfasts were served. Putting it on the table, Li Niansheng suddenly raised his head and looked at my brother Changsheng. Are you immortal? I am an immortal. How could I watch your mother and others die from the plague? Your mother is a good friend of mine. Facing my answer, Li Niansheng lowered his head and looked at the bowl in his hand. This year and I am not the little girl I used to be. There are things you can't lie about. The sword hit me and I touched Li Niansheng's head and smiled. He looked at you seriously, seeing the sadness and pain in your eyes. If you had a way to save my mother, you wouldn't have watched her die. There is also a secret that my mother told me before she died. Talking. He took the bread and put it in his mouth, then continued to take the bowl and drink the porridge. He was unfazed by Li Niansheng's words. Seeing my appearance, why did you miss it first? Do the same thing now. Seeing this, I had to lay down my hands. Wan Qingsheng said, I hope it was your descendants who buried you with my own hands, not me. You know what I mean. Niansheng couldn't help but clench his fists. 18 years ago, when he had not yet been born, Chen Changsheng had already fallen in love with his mother. 18 years had passed and Chen Changsheng still looked like he was 20 years old. For some reason, Li Niansheng knew that Chen Changsheng could live a very long time, even longer than ordinary people could imagine. The corners of Li Niansheng's mouth trembled, but he still smiled at the city of tomorrow. An immortal came to choose an apprentice. I want to try it. Immortals can live a very long time. Maybe I can always accompany you. After saying that, Li Niansheng turned around and left in front of the door. Li Niansheng's footsteps stopped. Brother Changsheng, have you heard of it? In one sentence, people are trapped by things that they couldn't get when they were young. To yourself. Li Niansheng's figure has disappeared, but I know that the immortal just looked lonely in the direction of Li Niansheng's disappearance. I was thinking. The next day, a yellow beam of light floated over the city, emitting a dazzling golden light. Everyone in the city was angry and grateful for the appearance of that sort immortal. Always maintaining his indifference, he waved his right hand and a huge rock appeared out of thin air on the ground. Then the woman's cold voice sounded. Those seeking immortality under the age of 16 can come forward to seek immortality. Even though it was only a short sentence, this sentence made everyone excited. Unattainable status, then immortality is an existence that no one can even dream of. Becoming immortal is not only no longer suffering from hunger and suffering, but also escaping reincarnation and realizing the suffering of the world must meet the legendary immortality. Salute! Soon all the adults in town brought their children to test immortality. Unfortunately, immortality is not as common as cabbages on the street, and there are few that can make the stone shine. After a long time, Li Niansheng finally walked towards the rock. As he gently placed his hand on the stone suddenly emitted a dazzling blue light. Hanging in the air suddenly became interested. In the next second, his figure came to Li Niansheng's side and looked carefully. After exploring its physique, it turned out to be the best water spirit root. Become excited. He is willing to worship me as his disciple. When he saw that an immortal accepted him as his disciple, Li Niansheng was happy at first, but his smile didn't last long, and he immediately became doubtful. The woman quickly understood Niansheng's thoughts. Her relative said that the woman took out a package from the space ring and gave it to Li Niansheng. You left after an hour. Looking at the package in her hand, a familiar face appeared in her mind again. Li Niansheng's face flew a mile away and then quickly returned to the shop, the coffin, to see you. This woman with the best water spirit roots is also very willing to wait in the coffin shop. She leaned against the coffin and read the Tibetan scriptures. Then Li Niansheng pursed his lips and came in and saw your face, immortal. Wenyan, you put down the book in your hand and didn't show any surprise. When I tested immortal destiny, I was among the crowd. I just came back early and looked down. Who didn't dare to look at himself, said flatly, as do you really want to go? Why do you want to go? Hearing this, Li Niansheng's hand couldn't help but tighten, and then he softly said, for a long life. The 4 words that came out of his mouth were light, but these 4 words but the words are as heavy as 1,000 sentences, because only if you live forever can you live forever. Seeing Li Niansheng's stubborn look, I couldn't help but smile and then came to him. There are many people in the world who have changed from mortals to immortals, but no immortals have ever become mortals. It can be seen that the road to immortality is a road of no return. The day you get tired of walking and look back, Brother Changsheng will always be behind you. I hugged Li Niansheng tightly. However, during the hug, Li Niansheng heard my serious tone coming out of their bones. It is necessary to guard against others. After saying this, I smiled and let go of Li Niansheng. Oh, the timeless presence in a humble abode really makes that humble abode shine at the door. However, the woman at the door showed a disgusted expression. He never thought that such a genius background would be such an unlucky coffin. This girl destined to have a bright future took it upon herself to accept a disciple with extraordinary talent. My smile became brighter after saying this, all thanks to God Niansheng's wise eyes and pearls on, he will trouble the immortal. By the way, I don't know where the immortal mountain is, where the immortal lives. The impatience in the woman's eyes grew stronger. There is a sect called Linglong sect thousands of miles away to the south. Ordinary people might not be able to get there in 30 years. Saying that, the woman looked at Li Niansheng. I have a mission when I go out this time. We have to get out quickly. In classical Chinese, Niansheng gently lays down that the burden will surely come to you. After the 2 of them left, I cleaned the room with a smile on my face, and said something happy from time to time. The words and baggage left by Niansheng were stored in the system space that I had lived here for 8 years. In these 8 years, my appearance has not changed at all. Rumors have spread in the city. If I continue to stay, it will definitely cause panic. For 8 years, I can't walk. For 30 years. I haven't been able to walk. For 50 years. I don't have much, I just have more time. After I complained to the woman again, I disappeared at the end of the street. If I go, the city will treat me. Its existence has been discussed for a long time. Some people said that Changsheng was a man who raised chickens and dogs and ascended to Jiwu heaven and took Longevity Chen away. Others say that Longevity Chen had a conflict with the immortals and was killed by the immortals, but then he died. As time went by, everyone gradually forgot about the longevity person who put the coffin away for 20 years. I spent a lot of money on exercise books. Fortunately, you have been practicing for 20 years. I finally reached the first level of chi refining. It took me 20 years to reach the first level of chi refining. This heavenly hair ring really stretches my hips. Fortunately, when I have a very long life, apart from being careful, I will also become more careful. Facing this extreme boredom, I set a small goal for myself, which was to see if Niansheng was okay. However, when I achieved this small goal, I found another hobby, which was studying as long as I found something that interested me. I would stop and spend a few years studying each industry. In the past 20 years, I have been a beggar, selling tofu, and learning the art of brewing. But among so many industries, the one I am best at is one-stop serving. The reason is very simple, except for the white-collar industry, even if you are a beggar, you will definitely be involved. Because beggars also want to seize territory. If a thief comes, no thief will come. No matter whether you are a high-ranking official or a high-ranking official, don't rob. Even the royal family and nobles would definitely be confined by this board. Walking around for 50 years had passed. When I arrived at Linglong City, I saw figures flying over my head from time to time. I closed my mouth and sighed. No wonder the woman listened for a total of 50 years to get here. Ordinary people are not lucky enough to live to be 50. After sighing for a moment about the cruelty of time, I started looking for a suitable shop in the small mountain gate town of Linglong sect. It was also the favorite place of the handyman disciples of the Linglong sect. Originally, I planned to sneak into Linglong sect to see how Niansheng was doing, but I dropped this idea when I came to Linglong City. Because the legend of Li Niansheng circulated hundreds of miles around the Linglong sect. A rare genius who had only been around for 50 years, he had mastered the seclusion gold elixir for a long time. Faced with such an arrogant woman, many young people, a talented person with an unyielding materialistic desire becomes a Taoist companion with him, but in the face of countless geniuses, Li Niansheng's response was always just one sentence. All of you combined are not as good as the famous Li Niansheng. My sense of existence can be said to be the same as no one in the entire Linglong City pays attention to the most important thing in Linglong City. I have opened a coffin shop on the spot remote, but I have opened a coffin shop here for 3 years. During this period, almost no one paid attention to it. I didn't grow low-quality forest grass and sell it. I'm afraid it would have closed long ago. Came here to meet me. When the holy will came, I jumped out of the coffin and touched the little monk's round head. What was the little monk doing in my coffin shop? Tianfo Temple and Linglong sect worked together to surrender and kill a super demon cultivator. I didn't want to see his body exposed in the wilderness, so he wanted to buy a coffin to bury him. When he heard what the little monk said, I pricked my mouth. Are you rich? Do not do business at a loss. Under the leadership of the little monk, I finally met the so-called demon cultivator. I didn't want to see his body exposed in the wilderness, so he wanted to buy a coffin to bury him. When he heard what the little monk said, I pricked my mouth. Are you rich? Do not do business at a loss. Under the leadership of the little monk, I finally met the so-called demon cultivator. At this moment, he was no different from a dead human arranging the appearance of the corpse before him. Every step is done carefully and seriously. After an hour, I started using the coffin compass, and buried the coffin for 2 hours, even with the help of a young monk. But when I was erecting the monument, I stopped what I was doing because I didn't know him yet. His hands clasped together and said, "This benefactor is the leader of the heavenly demon sect, nicknamed the Blood Demon Patriarch." No one knows his specific name. As for the person who erected the monument, the benefactor can handle it himself. Faced with this answer, I waved my hand and said, the little monk waved his hand. Let's continue. If something like that happens later, remember to come to me. The monk tilted his head and thought for a long time, because this was the first time he encountered such a strange thing. There is an indescribable feeling about this person. As soon as I returned to the coffin shop, I immediately closed the door and looked curiously at the tooth in my hand. Found in the blood demon ancestor. At first glance, it looks no different from ordinary teeth, but if you look closely, you can find several small certificates engraved on it. Be careful, you can't find any useful clues. After all, these things can be accumulated for needs. My favorite thing to spend time collecting is lighting an oil lamp. I started studying the lines on my teeth, took out a stack of books for comparison. It took 3 months and I finally wiped out the blood demon ancestor and stayed. The establishment of spiritual roots. Wei looked at the name of the book in my hand, and my face was full of doubt. Spiritual roots are the foundation of a practitioner and are also the standard for measuring a practitioner's talent. The most common is the 5 elements spiritual root. Spiritual roots are divided into lower grade, middle grade and best and finest upper grade. There are also some strange spiritual roots, but among the many names of spiritual roots, I have never heard of the word Wiling root. Thinking about this, I immediately opened the first page of the book and followed the words of the book. When I caught my attention, I realized that this book was not a secret skill or technique. To be precise, it is just an autobiography, which records the life of the blood demon ancestor's cultivation process is not very good. His talent was almost unknown in the cultivation world. After struggling for many years in the Qi training period, the lowest existence, the blood demon ancestor came up with this idea obtained through companionship the day after thinking of this idea. Blood demon ancestor immediately began his own experiments, so blood demon ancestor began experimenting on living people. As more and more people died at his hands, his spiritual roots were completely utilized by him. The quality of spiritual roots cannot be improved through all the methods currently known to cultivators, such as dry medicine techniques, formations, etc. However, the quality of spiritual roots can be improved by swallowing spiritual roots. After knowing the secret of this blood demon, the ancestor really launched his counterattack. After Lu devoured many weaker cultivators, the quality of the blood demon ancestor's spiritual roots also improved. In this virtuous cycle, the blood demon ancestor's strength became stronger and stronger, and finally he became a brain with some strangeness. Method. After he found out, I took the book back to the system space. I don't want to take his path, but since I can create artificial spiritual roots, there must be another way that doesn't kill people. Time is my greatest capital. Then I climbed into the coffin. I've been busy inside for 3 months and now I want to take a good rest. Collecting the body of the blood demon ancestor did not cause any disturbance. I started the peace and quiet days again. However, it is worth mentioning that a kind little monk comes to visit me every once in a while. Sometimes I ask people to collect corpses, and sometimes they tell me about my mostly Buddhist practice experiences. I have read books for decades, from Buddhist scriptures to Taoist classics to popular stories and fake novels of 50 years and little monk reforms, most of which are my triumphs. The years were long and 20 years had passed in the blink of an eye. The former little monk has grown into a master to participate in the ceremony of accepting the elders of the immortal fairy. Seeing this, I seemed to think of something. I took out a tiger-like wooden carving from my arms and saw what was in Chen Changsheng's hands suddenly change. Chen Changsheng, please don't tell me that you like the immortal fairy. This woman was completely uninterested in matters of reason. Say, Chen Changsheng, a man, had a request. Shu was so anxious that he scratched his head. Finally, Yi Shu took the wood carving. I can help you send it, but I can't name you. If immortal fairy finds out about this, you will probably die miserably. Yi Shu took him. The wood carving left the coffin shop and looked behind Yi Shu. I whispered to the little monk, see you in 80 years. After saying my life, I put some spiritual stones on the floor. Several array patterns suddenly appeared in the coffin shop. This is what I spent 10 years doing. The transmission range of the random teleportation array arranged at that time was unknown. The location of the teleportation was unknown. Its purpose was to prevent someone from discovering its location based on the teleportation array. Light flashed and I disappeared into the formation. A random teleportation array on the ground also destroying the entire Linglong sect was unheard of in the previous dynasty. However, the most talked about thing about immortal fairy besides her talent in cultivation was her unwavering Taoist heart. The answer was always just 2 words up: Li Niansheng, who was standing on the top of the mountain in a trance. When he heard someone calling, Li Niansheng sighed and turned his head slowly. The person who came was none other than Shui Linglong. The mentor Li Niansheng. Linglong in front of him said softly, Master, I don't want to be an elder. I just want to practice classical Chinese in peace. Shui Linglong opened her mouth. He is immortal. 70 years have passed and he has now become a gray-haired old master. He might even sleep underground. After all, you are people from 2 worlds. Do you understand? You do not understand. Brother Changsheng said that the road to immortality is long. If one day I look back, he will definitely be standing behind me. Back then, Li Niansheng was starting to become famous, but her obsession with him grew bigger day by day. Shui Linglong had visited that coffin spectrum, but after some inquiries, I discovered that after Li Niansheng left, Chen Changsheng also left immediately. It is not an easy task to find humans in a vast sea of people. Seeing Shui Linglong's silence, Li Niansheng's lips raised. I still want to take over the position of master and elder. I don't want to stop on this path because I know Brother Changsheng will not stop the elder succession ceremony. Seeing Li Niansheng's happy expression, Shui Linglong's frown deepened because in the past 70 years, her face had only smiled when she mentioned Chen Changsheng. But how long will this bubble-like fantasy last? Eternity for everyone. This was something that all practitioners yearned for, but no cultivator was capable of, let alone mortals. If one day Li Niansheng's illusion is broken, his Taoist heart will probably collapse in an instant. This Shui Linglong can only sigh again, because this is an unsolvable problem. Everyone in the sect's martial arts arena gave them congratulatory gifts. Yi Shu was so anxious that he scratched his head and swallowed his saliva hard on the wooden carving in his arms. After Yi Shu issued a congratulatory gift, many gods followed suit. Nian immediately saw it at a glance. After learning that the gift was a simple wooden carving, everyone almost laughed out loud. In the past 70 years, this gift representing the heart had been received by the immortal fairy. Not much, but all the gifts were burned to the ground by the immortal fairy. Just like usual, the originally calm immortal fairy suddenly stood up. The powerful cultivation of Vocal 7 made Li Niansheng come to Yisho in an instant. Looking at the wood carving in Yisho's hand, Li Niansheng's body trembled. The wood carving slightly and gently stroked the traces left by the carving knife. Li Niansheng once again felt Chen Changsheng's presence. With this unique animal form, there was only one long-lived brother in the world who did not miss appointments. He was always with me. Thinking about this, Niansheng held the wooden carving in his hand and then showed a smile that could make the world pale alone. Everyone's faces were full of smiles for a while. Hello, what happened? Fairy Changsheng fell in love with a little monk who built the seventh foundation. All the elders of the Linglong sect became happy and grateful to the immortal ancestor of the Linglong sect, blessing Niansheng. He finally found the answer. Although the strength and age of foreign cultivators are different. So a little, but it's not a big deal. After the seniority of the old monk of the Tianfo temple abdicated, the foreign cultivator naturally ascended. Seeing everyone misunderstand, the foreign cultivator suddenly stood on the spot because he didn't know why he was famous for his indifference. How would a mortal fairy like an ordinary wood carving ceremony? Hurriedly went to Li Niansheng to explain. In order to make Li Niansheng believe, the foreign cultivator told Chen Changsheng all the things that happened in the past few years of innocence. The original coffin was covered with all traces of Chen's life. Long live. All traces of longevity. Chen's life disappeared, leaving only an empty shop, as if longevity Chen had never appeared at all. However, faced with the restlessness of the alien cultivators, Li Niansheng never remained calm from beginning to end. He said, Yisho, do you want to be a Taoist couple with me? To think about it now, and he didn't want to think about the future, let alone Wenyan. Li Niansheng was satisfied. Nod, from now on, you must not mention a word of Chen Changsheng's name, your life will be in danger. After saying this, Li Niansheng turned and walked out of the coffin shop. Facing Li Niansheng's threat of killing, the foreign cultivator immediately realized that something was wrong with Chen Changsheng, and it seemed like he had known him for a long time. He glanced behind Li Niansheng and then at the empty coffin shop. But no one can answer this question for me. The only way to solve this problem may be time. Somewhere in the wilderness, I saw a gong plate in my hand, a red bird in the front, a black bird in the back, and it turns out to be a geomantic treasure. Suddenly I became excited. I immediately patted my thigh because I grew up with Nian. It took me 8 years to walk to the Linglong sect. It took me 50 years to arrive near the Linglong sect. After that, I lived in Linglong City for another 20 years. From the 80-year-old Shouyuan, now only the next 2 years will start to fall asleep finding a good place. After a full year of patrolling back and forth in the cave, I finally showed a satisfied smile. I spent a year digging a cave in a mountainside to prevent it. I was disturbed in my sleep, and I made a very easy disguise for the cave entrance. I took out the jade coffin from the system space and started my 80-year sleep, but before that, I had to plant the roots of spiritual practice because 10 years ago I had already thought about it. A safe and secure method has been found. Time flies, the sun and moon pass. For me, 80 years may pass as soon as I close my eyes or open them, not in a short time. There are many mountains where I live. Those plants have gone through dozens of reincarnations. Yes, the green-haired monster in front of me is the one that has been sleeping for 80 years slumbering. I am not in a hurry to improve my attributes. Instead, I took out the magic weapon to test Lingen's growth. Lu Mao's hand was placed on the crystal ball. The crystal ball immediately lit up with rich green light. I finally couldn't help but laugh. Artificial forest roots are indeed possible. Now I no longer have to worry about being caught by those powerful people for research. That is, I am afraid that others will know the secret of immortality. Although I can gain attributes through sleep, but if I want to become strong, I must gain the power to protect myself during this transition period from a very good method. After confirming that I had Lin Zhen on the screen, I looked at the system panel in my mind. Host Chen Changsheng. Strength 1, Speed 1, Defense 11, Spiritual Strength 0, Age 160. When I looked at the system panel, my face was filled with question marks. Why are my attributes declining? Before I fell into a deep sleep, I should have been at the 4th level of Qi training to some extent. Why are they now mortal attributes again? Facing my question, the system voice answered immediately. During deep sleep, the spiritual power in the host's body will slowly spread outwards, will naturally return to mortal standards, except for the power obtained through attribute points. I pursed my lips at this explanation and quickly accepted it. I now have Lin Zhen's talent at the 4th level of Qi training screen. Then I immediately poured 80 attribute points on defense. Seeing the defense attribute as high as 91 points, I am satisfied with the opening system. What level of modification can a defense force of 91 points resist? Defense attribute assistance 91 points. Attacks with powerful energy cannot penetrate your defense. If you encounter an enemy that exceeds the strength of the assistants, the host will definitely die at the entrance of the cave. There was an explosion, followed by a figure jumping excitedly. God has been helping me recently, and this time I will definitely break through to the 9th level of Chi training. Looking straight at me, the sword flew and attacked me. Facing this inexplicable attack, I subconsciously raised my head. Blocking the sharp sword with his hand, it was immediately blown away. Seeing that his strongest method was ineffective, the figure's heart suddenly glowed with 99 kinds of hair. In fear and despair, the figure rolled its eyes and fainted. The sword hit me. I scratched my head in confusion, then walked out of the coffin, and walking towards me was a little girl from the demon clan. The two furry fox ears were about 16 or 17 years old. They held the rejuvenation plant tightly in their hands. It must have been this rejuvenating plant that interested him. Understand. The reason was because I was about to leave this place, but Hooer Neong, who was in a coma, woke up to find a green-haired corpse looking directly at her. He was so scared that he curled up into a ball. Junior, I have disturbed Senior Ching Shu. Forgive me, Senior. It wasn't me. The meat is very sour. Neong's reaction. Seeing Hooer Neong kneeling on the ground, I originally planned to fool her for a few words and then split up. But after thinking about it, I decided to take it from a simple Hooer Neong that I got some information from and said that I was randomly teleported here 80 years ago and spent the rest of my time building a tomb. Now I don't know about the environment here. Blindly walking around might cause unnecessary trouble, so I groaned for information. When I heard what I said, Mrs. Hooer immediately said it respectfully. I've been wandering around here and none of the clan members around me heard that there were 300 miles to the east. When I heard the name Kamijokan, I immediately searched for it in my mind. To prevent myself from getting lost after teleporting, I tried my best to collect many maps of the Daimai dynasty as well as knowing at least half of Kamijokan. It was about 1,000 miles away from Linglong sect. Unexpectedly, he had teleported so far. I muttered to myself, I will not hold you responsible for the crime of trespassing in the cave. Go, Senior, that's all. After leaving, Hooer's cute mother subconsciously said what she thought you wanted to do. But in this situation, I heard that Senior, shouldn't you give me a chance? Looking at Hooer's mother's clear and stupid eyes, I couldn't help but feel happy in my heart and said that Fox is very cunning. This is the first time I have met such a person. Simple. You and I were destined to meet, so I will give you some opportunities. Then I casually told some life experiences and insights on the runway, including the fact that he was still alive when he was 5 years old, and said, I'm done. You can go. If you appear before me again, your life will be in danger. Thank you for your guidance, Senior. Beautiful women will never forget to do it for me. After the gift, Hooer Neong immediately turned around and left. Looking at Hooer Neong's back, I smiled, then found the opposite direction and left. Although my defense power is very high, my attack method is almost zero, which means I can't beat this little fox at all. It would be bad if the little fox discovered his lack of insight into looking in the mirror. I don't know if it was useful. After all, I never achieved the goal of staying in the mirror for 80 years and started again. Niansheng has stopped wandering aimlessly and is living his own life. Now he doesn't need me to worry about him.